Welcome to the Visitor Center. Today I'll be talking with the artist Don Pendleton about his formative years, his cultural inspirations, skateboarding, music, and the sacrifices it takes to live and work while pursuing your craft. Hope everyone enjoys. All right, Don, thank you for being here. Glad you're here, brother.
Happy to join you.
All right, let's just get right into it. What set off your interest in drawing and art? Was it like classes in school, a family member, something external, or did it feel like an internal or natural thing to do?
When I was about 7 years old, my dad got laid off from work. So to fill his time up, he would sit at the kitchen table and paint. And he did that every night, almost like it was his job. So I would just sit there beside of him. And eventually he got me a couple of canvases and paint. And yeah, I already had markers and crayons and all that stuff. So right around the time I was 7, I started doing that stuff with him. And we just kind of did it together just to pass the time, and spend time together. Eventually I got into art at school a little bit more and kind of focused on it. I just enjoyed it. I feel like that's what a lot of kids do when they start out. They get a box of crayons and a sketch pad or a coloring book. S-
Right.
that's the same way I started, was just to pass the time and have fun. And I just like doing that. If I couldn't be outside doing something, like, I wanted to do something creative.
That's cool. Your dad was doing it. Wasn't your brother into art too?
A little bit. I remember, when we were at that age, he had a sketch pad too.
Hmm.
So we both would just sit around and, I remember drawing a lot of pics. Like, for some reason, we would draw these little comic strips and stuff. And so he was into it. He was more kind of in creative writing and
Yeah, that's
like,
that's what I thought. Yeah, didn't he write for some comic book stuff or
he started off doing that real early on, and it just never came together, but
hmm
definitely pursued it. And, he was a collector, and he had, even by the time I was in middle school, he had a whole bookshelf full of books and stuff. So that was just his thing. I was more into art. He was into writing.
understand? So was that like your main hobby or thing to do when you were a kid? Was art like drawing, sitting around drawing?
Until I was about like 12, like,
Hmm.
I played sports, I played basketball and football. Like 55 pound me just getting tossed around by I seriously played midget football with this guy who had a full beard when he was like, and weighed like 180 pounds, and I weighed like 55. So I was really fast. I just wasn't good at any other parts of football. But I played sports a little bit, and, like, in downtime, it was always just drawing and, listening to music and that kind of thing.
And like what kind of music were you listening to back then? Were there any bands or solo musicians you were into, or were you more interested in movies? Like as a preteen, were you into just like pop music or
I mean, my earliest memories of music was just listening to what my mom and dad listened to, which was like Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings and country music. Just,
Mhm.
like, that was always in the background. And
And obviously like radio and stuff, you know.
yeah, yeah, a little bit of that, especially in the mornings. Like, when I would get up for school, my mom would have the radio playing stuff, but it was like the local country station.
Mm-hmm.
Up until when I was just really young, like, even we'd get in the car to go on a trip, and it was always like Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, and Statler Brothers and stuff like that. And then as I got a little bit older and listened to the radio, then it was just pop music, from the time I was about like 10 or 11. It
Mm-hmm.
was on the radio. I didn't, you know, people have to understand that before the internet, where you grew up, you were kind of on this island.
Yeah, you get what you're fed to or like what you hear in the background. Maybe if you go see a movie and you hear some music. Were there any movies that like really stuck with you back then?
At that age, no, I mean, it was just like Smokey and the Bandit stuff. Thing that
Star Wars? Were you into
Yeah,
Star
yeah,
Wars?
for sure. Like, I remember my dad took us to Charleston, which is like an hour away, just to see The Empire Strikes Back when that came out, because we were such a fan of the original. So, like,
Did,
ET, Star Wars, any kind of like sci-fi stuff. I remember Close Encounters when it came out. Like, that was
I
one.
just thought about this. How far away was the closest movie theater?
They have one in Ripley, so like,
Oh, okay.
so
That's not that far.
the Alpine Theater. There, you would watch it like the movie, and you'd see like a silhouette of rats like running across the stage underneath the screen because it was just so blown out and torn up. But that was it. And then they opened up another one that was kind of nicer in my high school years.
Hmm.
Nothing,
That's
no, nothing.
yeah. I just didn't know if there was any movie you were like, oh, I really like the aesthetics of this, like the look of it, or anything
E.T.
like
for
that.
sure.
E.T. E.T. was huge, dude. I remember my dad taking me to go see. Although I went to most movies by myself, like E.T. was one of the movies he actually came and saw with me.
Yeah, that was a good one. And then Gremlins, I remember like I was so stoked on the little puppets that they used.
Dude, Gremlins was rad back then. Like, yeah, I like the Raiders of the Lost Ark stuff when I went to see those in the theater. Uh, yeah, Purple Rain. I saw that.
Oh, I mean, that's a whole other era for me, but like that during that age when I was like 10, 11, 12,
Hmm.
anything with good special effects, because I grew up watching Star Trek on TV. So anything that had to do with space and lasers and aliens, all that stuff.
Did you see Flash Gordon back then?
Oh, yeah, I fucking love Flash Gordon. That was, I mean, the Queen soundtrack. My brother had that
Yeah,
vinyl, and um,
like the Italian, like production and stuff made it kind of like
yeah.
interesting visually.
Oh yeah, real flashy, the outfits and stuff. It was like I think that Oscar de la Renta did a lot of the costuming on that one and
Exactly.
like pretty far out there. But it's like that dystopian future that people were trying to imagine like what are people gonna be wearing in 100 years.
Yeah. Yeah, like the early hip hop groups that came out in like crazy outfits, like village people almost. They were just dressed in all kinds of crazy stuff.
Oh, the future was looking spicy back then. Like
Funkadelic Parliament, that's what. Do you remember the first album you saved up and paid money for?
yeah, that was Prince 1999. And I went to the Parkersburg Mall of my neighbor, which is like 45 minutes away. And I already I'd already heard Little Red Corvette in 1999 just on like Friday night videos or something. So
Hmm.
they got that album and it was a double album and I mean that's still one of my favorite albums to this day. It was on cassette. I had one of those Walkmans that I bought like 2 weeks before at Hex and Ripley. And
Nice.
my dad was,
Was it a real Walkman or like a
oh no, it was like
bootleg walk like Sanyo or something?
X or something, like one of those off brands with the big orange like foam here.
Uh,
So yeah, I had that and I didn't have anything to listen to on it. So my dad bought me a Thriller, which had come out, I guess, in like 82.
mhm.
And then later on, like 3 weeks later, I bought 1999. So I had Michael Jackson and Prince, but Prince was
Nice.
I bought mine with my own money that I was.
That's sick. That's a sick first album to buy. I remember I wanted a Walkman so bad, a cassette Walkman. And my dad, we were poor. He took me to like Sears or JC Penney or something. So went there to look and I saw the Sony ones with the tape decks and I was like that. And he was like, saw the price, was like, no, that. And it was like I don't know, like generic one or whatever, but no tape deck, even just the radio. But I was still stoked, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think mine was actually the Grand Prix. That was the brand.
Hmm.
I'm thinking about it, and it didn't have the radio built in. Like the super ghetto ones were just the radio, and they were kind of super small. But
Hmm.
when I had the tape player, but no radio, so
Oh.
and it went through batteries. Like you could listen to one album, and the batteries would be drained. It was such a money pit when you save up to get it, and
Did
then
you have a boombox?
I did. I had an Emerson like double tape, like where you get dub tapes. I think I probably got that in like fifth grade or something.
Yeah, I had a okay one at yeah, it was dope, dude.
Feel like I've seen pictures of you with yours. Like there's a picture I've got of you during your breakdancing years, and you have that boombox, and you've got like Nike wraps on. I think like I'll have to try to dig that up. But
Yeah, yeah. They're probably the Vandals, the ones like the Vandal
oh
Supreme. Yeah, the like silky ones.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
like nylon. Yeah. I was all about that.
Okay, so yeah, like my transition from like listening to Michael Jackson and Prince that kind of slowly led into breakdancing. right around that same age, like 12, 13,
Mm-hmm.
from seeing the movie.
And you break in and Beach Street.
Yeah, for sure. I saw both of those, and just like the music. And by that point, I had heard like Rapper's Delight and The Message, and like on vinyl, people that I knew had just had that stuff. So I'd heard some rap music and breaking. That was it. Like I learned the moonwalk when Michael Jackson came out from
Mm-hmm.
Motown.
Motown. Yeah, Motown 20. Yep.
Yeah, like I feel like we had three channels at that point. Everybody was watching that.
Yeah, dude, that was really impactful to everyone, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had to learn moonwalk. And then after that, it's just natural progression to go into breakdancing.
Yeah, and you get fed all that electro music and not electronic music, like electro music. You know, I liked it.
Yeah, it was a good era. I mean, you would see breakdancing in a commercial or something on TV and you'd just be so stoked because, you know,
Yeah.
didn't see it anymore. So aside from a movie or something, like all that culture from New York, just it took years to trickle down into a place like West Virginia. So you just took little bits and pieces of what you could get.
Now, do you remember the first fine artist that you were aware of? Aware of?
I would say probably Picasso when I was
Yeah.
in high school or middle school, right around that era. We had to study a little bit of fine arts, and I think we were supposed to. I think we took like a half of a painting from a famous painter and filled in the rest, like in our own style or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure I had Kandinsky at the time, but I didn't really know who Kandinsky was. It was just, I think the teacher had given me this and said, like, finish the other half. And it was an interesting little practice, but I didn't really learn much about art history until college.
Dude, it's crazy how big Picasso is. Because even as a kid, like kids, like I don't know if nowadays, but I would have probably known who Picasso was when I was 8 years old for some reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's wild. What about commercial art and design? Were you aware of those things, or was that of interest to you? Did you ever get like packaging and be like, "Oh, this is a really dope package. I like the way this looks." Or
Yeah, I would say just culturally, all like just see getting like a cassette or an 8 track or an album, like you got really into the album cover. And then when you bought toys, the packaging, like Star Wars toys, the way that those were packaged, and even the catalogs that came with them, all that stuff. But
mm-hmm.
I think in eighth grade, I had to job shadow somebody that I wanted to do their job, and I chose a commercial artist that lived in Ravenswood. He did
Oh,
sign painting and stuff like that. And I spent the day with him, and he was super technical about all the sign painting, and at the end of the day, I was like, I don't really like this. Isn't what I like. Like I want to do the fun stuff. I don't want to do the technical stuff. I just want to like paint pictures and have fun. And so it didn't. He was really talented. Wasn't what I wanted to do by the time I kind of finished that day.
yeah. Package design, graphic design can be soulless in a lot of ways when you're designing stuff like that. I mean, but if someone comes up with a cool look, it always kind of sticks with you. Like a brand, branding, I guess.
Yeah, and I think my world was so small at that point, around like seventh and eighth grade. I wasn't thinking like, oh, I can move to another city and do this. I was thinking like, what opportunities are around me? And sign painting would have probably been the only way I could have made some kind of career doing art in that area. So
Right.
I got older, then I was like, oh, I could pretty much do anything I wanted to do if I'm good enough at it. And that was the challenge. I just didn't, you know. Like I didn't think I was really good enough to go to New York and compete with artists or designers or any of that stuff. I just wanted to kind of stay where I was.
So, how did you find skateboarding, which is like a creative person's trait, really?
Um, I went to Virginia Beach in 1985, and like in the spring of 1985, and I didn't go to Mount Trashmore. Like I know it existed at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Just at the boardwalk around the beach, and I saw people with like modern day boards, and I had already had a banana board. Like my brother had one. I think he got it in 1977, and he didn't really use it, but it sat around the house, and so I'd pull it out and like go up and down the driveway and stuff. Then in like '85, like I was saying, I saw like the modern wider boards and people doing tricks on them, and
Hmm.
all the surf culture associated with like the clothing, all that stuff was already a part of skateboarding, like the baggy like jams, all that surf gear was kind of intermeshed with it all, and I just liked the beach aspect of it, surfing aspect.
So did you immediately start copying and drawing skate logos and graphics?
I would say after that trip, like later on in 1985, I went to a BMX like freestyle demo. It was
Hmm.
CW. They were in Ripley, and it was Seppi Mays, Diz Hicks, and Mike Buff, like these professional freestyle bikers. Because
Yeah, I know. Out of those, I know who Diz Hicks and maybe Mike Buff. I know that CW team a little bit because I was into BMX and stuff.
okay, so they're from California. Seppi Mays gets out of the band, and he's got a Mark Gonzalez Vision, like that first Gonsport.
Hmm.
And so he's skating the ramps that they brought, and I'm like, holy shit, like he's doing bonuses and stuff on the like a wedge ramp, and so like having seen it at the beach, and then having seen this and seeing it in Freestyle magazine because they started to show pictures of like street skating. I was like, I just like the whole part, like all of it, the art, the graphics, like the clothing. So I was 14 at the time, and that was it. Like skateboarding was cheaper than BMX freestyle because I couldn't afford like the fancy bikes, and you needed a good bike to be a good freestyler. So I asked my dad, I was like, will you buy me one of these? And he said, if you save half of it, then I'll pay for the other half. And that's how I got my first like modern board.
Nice. Do you remember like what was your first? Do you remember the company like what company's art direction were you liking or attached to at that time? Like when you first started, were you like, oh, skulls are cool, pal is cool, it's really, or were you just like, did you like something else?
I like Vision from what I seen in their ads and like the boards that they had and the advertisements for the shops, that were selling like CCS or well, California cheapskates at the time. So you could buy a Transworld or Thrasher and it would show you like what was available. And I just like I like the Gator graphics, I like the Gons graphics, all those early ones. And
Yeah, I think Vision had interesting, like, I don't know who the graphic designer was or if they went through a bunch of them, but I like the way they did their graphics too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I always thought they looked good. If you didn't like Santa Cruz, but you liked color, like a lot of colors or maybe like a different, more designy touch, I don't know. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass, but Vision was pretty cool.
well, I saw the old Ghost Guardian. Um, that was a vision board. It was a series called like the Old Ghost series, and they had Guardian, a Street Ghost, and Hippie Stick. And the Guardian was kind of more of a street shape, and so that was my first board that I got. And then I wrote a letter to John Grigley because it wasn't really his pro model at the time, but he designed them, and they made
Hmm.
ads that showed that the artwork. So I wrote a letter to Grigley at Vision, and he wrote me back, and he sent me all these pictures and like some artwork that he had made. I still have that stuff.
That's sick.
Yeah, so that was it. Like, to get a little bit of attention from somebody that was famous in my eyes, like I was 100% Vision from then on. And then I was a huge fan of Gonzalez from that first Oceanside Street contest. Like when I think he was an amateur at that point, but he was good. He could ollie at the highest, and like that's what I wanted to do. So
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know what one you're talking about. And he looks when you watch I've watched all those contests, even like a couple years ago again. He looks like 10 years advanced than everyone else in terms of his style, the way he's doing his tricks, his like feet placement. You know what I'm saying? He just looks more advanced than everyone else. Like he's an alien and everyone else is human, you know what I mean?
no, it's true. And I mean, you could tell that he was like thinking all this stuff through, like he was putting the parts together in his head. Of like, well, if you can do this and you can do this, you can combine tricks and you can take them to different types of obstacles. And I think that's when you watch him progress over the years, it's just like he's taking it to the next level and being more creative and skating stuff that people wouldn't think to skate at the time.
So you get into skating, and which introduces you to a whole new world of music, obviously. Were there any bands like right off the bat that you liked? Punk bands or uh
Yeah, we like okay. So I had this friend named Dusty, Dusty Smith in Ravenswood. He was really the only other skater in town, and we went in and we bought that Sure Grip NSA Oceanside Video Street Contest. In the
hmm
background, you can hear like what they're skating to. So there's like the Sex Pistols, Dead Kennedys, The Cure. Like that's really the first time I'm starting to hear snippets of stuff because I didn't have MTV, I didn't have a radio station where I could hear it. Um,
Right. That's why like, I always think of people try to think of myself like what were you listening to before you started skating and then after because it just there's all these smaller indie bands, punk bands, underground bands and stuff that like the skateboarding world liked at that time. And so yeah, you're just introduced to a whole new world of music.
yeah, and I remember getting Thrasher, which I ended up getting like maybe 5 months after I'd gotten an issue of Transworld, because again,
hmm
like you can't just go down the corner store in Ravenswood and buy Transworld. So where I could find it, I would buy it, and then I got a copy of Thrasher, and they had like Igor's record collection and skate rock, and so you got introduced to like the punk stuff like Gangrene and JFA and Misfits. And so I didn't know what they sounded like. I knew the logos, I knew the name. And then if like I would say by the time I was a sophomore in high school or freshman or sophomore, a guy moved to town from Spokane, Washington, and he had all these mixtapes. So I got to hear like Minor Threat, Reagan Youth, like all these punk bands that I just had seen their names before. Finally
hmm
to hear them on like a tape that's been taped like 40 times, and the quality's so bad to begin with. But um, like
You got to associate the music with the bands.
yeah, yeah, and it like makes sense. Like the super like fast paced punk rock like compared to skateboarding, especially when you watch like a vert contest. You hear they put like punk rock music to it or thrash or something. It just makes sense. It's like it was made for that kind of thing.
Did you like the more like punk stuff or the more heavier like thrash metal or even.
I really like Black Flag. Damage was the first like I'd say punk album I ever had, and that was I think I got that in 85 or 86.
hmm
And but yeah, I would say like just having those mixtapes to hear all a little bit of every band, and like I was starting to pick out certain bands that I liked. Like I liked Circle Jerks, Black Flag, like um
Just the bands we all get when we first start skating.
yeah, yeah.
It's like you
This
get
the stereotypical
yeah,
you would
exactly.
think. Like that's just and plus like they had identity behind them, like the Black Flag logo, the Circle Jerks logo, the
hmm
JFA logo, like all that stuff I already seen and associated with skateboarding. So it was like, but I did like it. That's the thing, and I
hmm
didn't really have to like convince myself like, oh, I should be listening to this. It was so much different than what was on the radio at the time, what I'd been
Then
listening to, which was like, Prince,
yeah,
R&B, hip hop,
Dawkins.
Doc, and probably Motley Crue. Like
Yeah, that crap. That was the worst.
that's
Okay.
what was around, like
I know, dude.
growing up in West Virginia. As soon as you hit the teen years, they give you like a Motley Crue cassette and like a can of snuff, and they're like, "Good
And a
luck,
mullet.
go make a life for yourself." That's it.
Okay, let's get into some more music stuff here real quick. I'm gonna name some bands or musicians, and I want your quick, honest thoughts. And this isn't gonna last very long. There's only a short list of bands here.
Okay.
Uh, Color Me Bad.
I want to sex you up. I mean, it's just like some kind of psychological test, or am I just supposed? Do I like it or do I not like it?
You just gotta give me your quick thoughts, like garbage. Are they hilarious? Whatever.
Oh, they were like they were like a full grown man boy band. They had the black dude with dreads, like the dude with like the pompadour, like the dancer. It was just yeah, it was like the
The absolute worst. of late 80s, early 90s fashion too. Like their clothes, dude, it's out of control.
Yeah,
Okay.
the music was bad, the dancing was bad, everything about was bad. Sorry guys if you're out there. I was
King Diamond.
Grandma Dusty Smith. Like I did like some I did like some King Diamond in the late 80s, but as a novelty kind of. Like I thought the whole shtick, like the face painting and the Satan and stuff, like that part I thought was kind of funny. And just being around Dusty, he listened to it all the time. So I had to listen to it, but
Well, it was kind of like a running joke to us back in the day.
yeah, like not my cup of tea, but to say like
I remember, all I knew was like the imagery and the like being satanic and all this stuff, the face paint, and then you hear it and you hear that extremely high pitched voice, and you're like, what?
see
What?
the
And
first time I
you expect something different, and then you're just blown away.
yeah, the first time I heard it, I thought it was kind of a joke, but yeah, that was just Dusty's thing. Not my cup of tea, but I think it's kind of rad.
Okay, Terrence Trent D'Arby.
Like I feel like Terrence had some talent. It was like R&B, like kind of classic R&B with some pop mixed in, and his hair was pretty rad. He had like the super tiny cornrows, or I guess that's what it was called. No, like just the
Like
braid.
tight braids or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, super tight braids, and he danced around, but not again. Like that was it was so pop that as a skater, you kind of instinctively turned away from stuff that was on the radio.
Now, he's continued under a different name all these years. Like he puts out a ton of music, but he got rid of Terrence Trent D'Arby after like the second album, and he's some I forgot his name, dude, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not my thing. That's all I'll say about Terrence Trent.
Okay, that's enough with the band stuff there. So so we meet in 1987, I'm guessing it is. Do you think that's the year? I'm pretty sure that's when it
Yeah,
was.
yeah, I'd say that. Yeah, because my brother was at Marshall at the time, and that's why I was in Huntington, and so
Do you have any memories of that?
yeah, I mean it's weird. Like at that time in West Virginia, you didn't see other skateboarders. I didn't ever, So when you saw other skateboarders at random, like especially strangers, it was like two dogs, like two packs of dogs, like they're curious about each other, but they're like, "Are we gonna have to fight these people?" But you just really like yeah, skateboarders were like automatically allies. I feel like because there were so few of us
Yeah.
song. But then like we were kind of it was me and Dusty and we were kind of getting vibed a little bit. And so, so I remember we went to Iguana and I went in there and I think you were already in there and probably Brian.
No, dude, that's not how we met.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I promised you. Because I was skating up like Fourth Avenue and I saw you and Dusty on the other side of the street on the sidewalk. And I forgot who I was with, maybe David Harrison. I was like, who are these fools? Like, I've never seen you because you weren't from around here.
Right.
So I just, we skated across the street and started talking to you. And I just remember Dusty riding up the wall doing hand plants and walking off the wall with doing ho-hos and then walking back to the wall and riding the board down. And I was like, that's dope, man. Like he seems to be like a pretty good skater. But then I realized like that's all he could do. But
Yeah.
but yeah, like yeah, that's all I remember. And then we walked up to the banks, Chase Banks, and we were talking. And I just remember you said something like about like you were talking to Rocco or someone on the phone, like throwing some bullshit at me. And I was like, who is this fool try to like name drop Rocco on me?
I mean, I remember skating the banks with you, but I don't remember like the specifics. I think I just had so much anxiety back then, meeting people and
Well,
being in Huntington was kind of like nerve-wracking for me.
well, the crazy part, the craziest parts of this story for me is that uh, I don't know if we exchanged phone numbers or what. I think we may have that day, that first time we met. But I just remember going home, and I don't know if it was that day. I think it might have been. And I told my dad, I said, "Hey, I met some kid from Ravenswood because, like, I had never been to Ravenswood, but I know my dad worked at the plant, the nickel. What is it? What kind of plant is out there?
Aluminum plant.
aluminum plant for a little while or something. And so I was like, yeah, I met this kid from Ravenswood. His name's Don Pendleton. And my dad was like, Don Pendleton? I was like, yeah. Uh, he was like, I know his dad. I was like, what? That's the weirdest coincidence in the world because we live like an hour and a half away from each other, right?
Right.
We've never met, never seen each other, never heard your name. Uh, so yeah, I come and my dad's like, I know his dad, and my dad starts telling me stories of him and your dad when they were younger, like in high school or something, like driving the back roads with the lights turned down on a car, like racing other cars, like doing crazy stuff, and then telling me stories about you when you were a baby and stuff. Because my dad would go visit your dad sometimes. Because my uncle lived in Ravenswood as well, so my
Yeah, I
dad,
knew your cousin, Greg.
yeah, and I only went there maybe twice when I was a kid, and that's under the age of 10, maybe only once, and uh, that's the only time I had ever been there.
Mike Williams lived 2 homes up from your cousin, and we had a big quarter pipe up there on top of that hill. So if you would have come up there just once, you would have been like, "Holy!"
Well, the funny thing is I remember going. He lived next door to my cousin because I remember he was freestyling. He was freestyling in the driveway one day, and I was like, "Who is this fool like freestyling?" You know what I mean? I was like, "That's cool."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because we both, I mean, like me and Mike were both into freestyling before we got into skateboards. Because he had a skateboard early on. Like, uh, he kept at it for a while. It was just Dusty was the guy that started real early and kept going. So, but Mike Williams definitely was like one of those early skaters.
That's funny. The coincidence is like I could have met you. You could have been on your bike that day. I could have been. Who are these two fools? Not just Mike Williams.
Yeah, it's a small world. It's crazy. Like how.
Yeah, the fact our dads knew each other and then like we grew up and ended up as skateboarders and like me, like I think that's just pretty crazy.
Yeah, we were at the that Marina Massacre contest, and that was probably 87. Like during the winter, wasn't it like later we talked that was and my
No,
dad was there and your dad was there, I think.
the the Pullman Square, the Cruise Avenue contest was before that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was like the summer of 87 and that's the first time you probably came back down after we met.
Yeah, I can't I had my wisdom teeth taken out for that Cruise Avenue contest, and like the day before I had stitches in my mouth and I started bleeding when I was skating on that contest. I got super like lightheaded. That's all I remember from Cruise Avenue.
That's crazy. So anyhow, let's move on. You eventually moved closer to where I lived and started going to college at Marshall. Did you have any idea or vision of what you wanted to get out of your education, or like were you just winging it? Were you just like, okay, I like art, I'm just gonna go and figure it out?
Well, I had gotten a scholarship to the Columbus College of Art and Design, but it was still, I mean, it was a full scholarship, but it wasn't enough to cover like living expenses and stuff like that. So, um, I thought I was going to go there. And then, like a month before school started, I talked to my parents and they didn't really want me to go. So, I just went to Marshall. That was the default where everybody went to from Ravenswood that didn't really have a plan. And so,
Guana
yeah,
was there too. Like you had to be stoked if Guana was there. Like the skate shop was right up the street.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that was first in my mind was like, okay, I get out of Ravenswood and I have a place to skate. And I'd already talked to Ron, and Ron was like, yeah, you can work part time at the shop. And so I was stoked about all that stuff. I didn't care about the academic side. I didn't think I was going to learn anything, in terms of art and design at Marshall. Like I was kind of cocky at that point. I had a really good high school art teacher, and she was like, "You're gonna go backwards from here if you go to Marshall." And I just went there to skate, and that's all I did. Like for the first 2 years at least, it was like I had to work. I worked at the Parthenon, like I did part time paste up at the school newspaper, and then I worked at the skate shop and skated, and that was about it.
That's Was it hard to balance skating in school?
Not really, because I didn't put much effort into school.
You're just like
So like,
whatever.
yeah, I mean, I just wanted to get through that stuff. So it was like, how fast can I get down to the shop? like, and get down there and start skating. And like that's really there were a lot of times when I skipped classes so I could just get down there and skate, and that's all I cared about. But that's good. That was like the magic years, where I didn't have that much responsibility still, and it was just like at that point, we both had sponsors, and I thought like there's a chance I can keep going and keep going, see how far it goes. And so at that point, I still thought like if I keep filming, maybe something will happen. But that was like that was the fun years, like it just
Hell yeah.
all
We
that.
had a lot of fun, dude. Hanging out at the shop, we on the skate all the time. Even before you moved down here, you come down here and stay with me or whatever. That shit was fun.
Yeah.
Now, did you have any favorite artists you were into during your college years? Like, did you get into anybody? Like, oh, Basquiat, or oh, I'm into, Dubuffet. I'm into Dubuffet now. I only rock with Dubuffet.
No, no, it was still like my favorite artists were skateboard artists, like Neil Blender. Real early on, I like the coffee break board. I had that probably in '86 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So like Andy Jenkins, who I knew from Freestyle Magazine, I was a fan of his back then, and
Nice.
so yeah, like all these people that John Lucera, these people that I figured out were doing their own graphics, like those were my favorite artists because I was like, this is the way it should be. Like you've got the pro and the graphic and the company, and the pros doing their own graphics, and they're involved with the company, and they're even helping out with the ads. Like to me, I thought that was what skateboarding was. It was just an extension of who the person was, and the board was an extension of their creativity, and the company was like a part of that. So I liked all those early graphics. Not so much like I wasn't a Pal Peralta fan. Like I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why I did have a Ripper shirt. Like I liked some of the artwork, but I just wasn't. I never was like, oh yeah, like the Bones Brigade. But I knew
Yeah, I
who they were. But I just like I
I
was.
didn't spend my money. I never bought a PAL board. I never owned a new PAL board, and I didn't spend my money on PAL products. I love their videos. I love their skaters, but I just wasn't gonna spend my money on PAL boards. For some reason, I like Dogtown and like
Yeah.
Fogtown, the Beast graphic or Alva graphics. It was a little like rougher, like hand drawn ish kind of. I don't know, just a rough around the edges. I just kind of liked it.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I remember one time I went down there. It was before I knew you very well, but you had an Aaron Murray Dogtown board, and I was like, this dude could have any board in the whole shop, like because I knew you were tied with Ron, and I was like, why is he buying an Aaron Murray board? But I think Aaron Murray's sick. It just at the time he was that dude was just like underground hard.
Yeah, I think, I love those dudes, Aaron Murray, like Scott Oster and Tim Jackson and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it was less about them and more about the Dogtone graphics. There's just something about them like that kind of mix, like it's the Cholo style, like the handwriting, and they did just, yeah, I just liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember you had that red Fogtown shirt, and Sick Boys video was always playing at the shop. And you didn't see much of coverage of those guys, even in Thrasher. I mean, for being NorCal, like once in a while, like Mike Archimedes and I don't know
That's
who.
what was interesting about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't as polished, and you just didn't see those guys as much. So I don't know.
And
I
it's
think
weird to think like people in Ohio, this little small group of skaters, like pay attention to this stuff that's going on out in San Francisco and like these little tiny circles. It's I don't know, it's just goes to show you how everything works. It's connected in some way.
now. Do you remember the first time you were paid for your artwork?
Yeah, I would say probably 1984. This guy who had an auto detail shop in Ravenswood paid
Hmm.
me to paint a sign. He paid me $25 to paint like two plywood, 8x4
Nice.
sheets, and I it was like Mike's Auto Shop or something. I painted on there, so $20 I made, and I don't know, I guess it was worth it. I don't know, cutting grass probably at
20
the
bucks.
time, but,
It's
um
like two tapes or something. You went and bought two tapes. You bought two new Prince
exactly.
tapes.
Or probably something like during that era, probably like maybe like a pair of shoes or something or fat laces. Could've
Yeah.
like, definitely neon fat laces for my Chucks.
Crazy what an industry fat laces were for a brief year and a
Uh,
half.
dude, I got into lace variants, like, I did a lot of webbing,
Crisscrossing them. Well, yeah.
weaving, I did the whole 9, and, that was, like, what defined me as you get older from being a kid, like, you find these little parts of, like, culture and you adopt them into your, like, style or whatever, and that was just one of mine, like,
Hell yeah.
nobody at school had that, but I'm coming down the hallway,
You're rocking with the all
I'm
the
laced, I'm like, I
big
got
fat
that.
wavy laces.
It was tight back then, and I was so into breakdancing that, like, whatever I saw, in movies or commercials, I was into it.
So you graduate, and did you feel like there was like a future doing art and design at that time? Like after you graduated?
Yeah, because I had an internship in Connecticut. I worked for this newspaper up there.
Mm-hmm.
So I went from working at the school newspaper to working at this newspaper called the Putnam Post out in Putnam County.
Mm-hmm.
And I just did like advertisements, layup, some illustration. And when I went to Connecticut, I was doing a lot of like page layout and illustration and copy editing. And I was like, I can do this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like you don't have to compete with a million other people trying to get the job. And so I just got it really into like publication design and illustration. And I did that. And the newspaper told me, like if after you graduate, you could come up here. Okay, yeah, this was an internship. I think I had 3 more classes to go. So I had to come back to Huntington and get those 3 classes. And they were like, come back up here and work after you get your to pluck your degree or whatever. And I became a bartender instead in Huntington. I stayed in Huntington. But I was like, okay, so I can do copy editing, I can do illustration, and I figured that's what I would do. And then after I got sick of bartending, like I bartended for a couple years, and then I just went to Beckley and started working in a newspaper there. So I didn't think I had a career in art so much as like design and publication and editing and journalism. That was just all one package.
So were you drawing and painting in your time off at all at this time? Like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, fortunately, when I went to Beckley, like I got hired for $18,000 a year with a college degree, and that was salaried. So I worked like 55 hours a week or something.
well,
The good part was like I could do illustrations, I could do like special section design and like iconography and like infographics and stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
It would let me do whatever. So I built my portfolio up pretty quickly just by doing a bunch of illustrations for the paper. And at that point, that was half the challenge was to just get published and see your artwork in print. And so I had that. That's one of the reasons I stayed was because I had the opportunity to have all that stuff. And then from there, it was straight to workshop.
Now, at what point did you start embracing computers and programs like Illustrator? Do you remember?
Um, Yeah, that would have been at the newspaper in like 94. Just because everything had to be as streamlined as possible. So at the end of the day, you would put all like the words and the layout and illustrations together. It was called pagination and then print it out as one page. So I had to kind of like jump into it and learn it and figure it out just to like blend in with the rest of the process. So
Dude, that's a term I haven't heard in a long time.
yeah, like desktop publishing and pagination.
Just to the viewers, like I did work at a newspaper, Charlotte Observer in Charlotte, North Carolina for a while, and I did go to school for graphic design, but like that's just I haven't done any layout or anything in so long, but those it's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a lot of work, but so I went in there as a copy editor officially. That was they wouldn't have never hired just an artist, but so I got hired in as a copy editor, and by the time I left, I had become the news editor. So I was in charge of the copy desk and the front page and everything. And uh, it was super stressful. I had a ulcer, like it was killing me.
Not bad.
And so yeah, my apartment burned down. Like there was this 1 3 month period where I was having some heart issues. Like I got diagnosed with some heart rhythm problems. My apartment burned down, and all kinds of shit was just going bad. And then I saw the Alien Workshop ad that was posted online, like Columbus newspaper or whatever, this dispatch, I guess.
Hmm.
Was browsing online, just thinking like, if I can just get out of here, like Beckley, then I have a chance, maybe. So we're just trying to find some job somewhere, and it just happened to be that workshop post at the time, and I responded to it.
Okay. So you started working for the workshop, and like, how did things change for you in terms of your process for creating it this time? Because you went from working at the newspaper now to working for uh where you're solely focused on design, you know?
Yeah, I feel like I was ready for it because I had kind of spun my wheels for so long. Like I wanted to do full-time art and design, but I just had to do all the copy editing and write headlines and all that stuff, which is slowing down the creative parts.
Mm-hmm.
So to finally get a job where I had to be creative constantly, like I was ready for it. It definitely wasn't, it didn't feel like a challenge because I wanted to do it so badly and I enjoyed the process and all that.
Now, did you feel like you had to when you first got into the workshop because they had a really strong art direction, did you feel like you had to create for their art direction or that you could did it slowly take time to you to like ingest some of your style in there and feel comfortable doing it?
Yeah, me and Mike Hill, who was one of the owners and the art director, we didn't really talk about it. They put me in this room with a computer. It was so surreal. Like the room had just been painted white because they had just built these like little partitions, and they had the computer there and the desk. And I just went in there and like sat up there all day and drew. And I didn't really talk to anybody. Like I didn't even really talk to Hill. He was just like, just draw some stuff. And um, I don't know. It was
Well, that's interesting because Hill generally went in a cave, went in his cave back in the day, and no one ever talked or saw Hill unless
right.
you wanted to go like bum a filterless cigarette off of him.
Right. So we didn't, he was real super like shy, and I was kind of shy. And so he did his thing, and he had so much stuff. He was doing everything himself, which is absolutely fucking
Stress.
yeah. So when I figured that out and we kind of started talking, then it was like, well, you have all this stuff to do. Let me do some of the stuff you're working on. And he was like, yeah, just do it. And so the first boards I did for him or for the workshop, he actually laid them out. I did the little illustrations and the little characters or whatever, and then he put them on the board laid out. And so it was like a collaborative type of deal.
Hmm.
But yeah, I did try to make stuff look like it would fit in. I was a fan of the company since the earliest days. I mean, like memory screen, the like just all that stuff. It was I remember when we got it at Iguana, like me and Lance would buy all the stuff. Your mom would get mad because we would pull all the good colorways out of the t-shirts, like the early workshop t-shirts, and recording like the soundtrack off of memory screen and like playing that during when we're working at the shop. So I knew the company's history and was a fan. So I felt like I could kind of hit the ground running and not just redo something that they had already done, but like just kind of do my version of what they were working on.
So you eventually depart Alien and started to do your own thing. Do you remember the first project you were stoked on after you left?
Mm, well, after I gotta got excused from Alien. Like I didn't choose to leave. It was like things just kind of ran its course.
Mm-hmm.
And I was gonna start Darkroom. Like I was just gonna do a clothing line, and I got a call from Johnny, from the guy who owns Element.
Schiller F.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, "Hey, if you don't have any job, like come out here and let's talk. Like I'll fly out here." So I went out there and I talked with him and Jeff Dixon, who was in charge of the hard goods stuff at the time. And we went to this restaurant. We were talking like we all got along. Like I really like Jeff, but Johnny was like, you have to move out here for this. Like, this is our direction position. You'll be in charge of like the whole everything. So I need you here. And I was like, I'm not moving to California. But thanks anyway, and
Hmm.
I was getting ready to fly back, and Jeff was like, let me talk to him and see if we can get it worked out, to where you can do that from Ohio. And we did. And so I did that for 2 years, from Dayton. So I didn't really have to go out and look for clients or anything.
Hmm.
During that time period when I was with Element, I started getting offers to do like some stuff. Usually it was shoe stuff, like Soul Tech stuff or DC or like even Vita. Like Nodus hit me up about doing some stuff for Vita. Um, oh, what was it?
PBS,
What was that company that Dylan Reeder rode for? The shoe company.
Gravis.
Yeah, so I did some stuff for Gravis. A lot of my work came from shoe companies, and then it went out and like a little bit further to eventually it was like Mountain Dew and like bigger companies. And it just, I never chased it. It just came to me. And so I was just real fortunate.
Now, did you find that transition chaotic and stressful from working at the workshop to being like an independent contractor as an artist?
No, it was actually super mellow. Like that was when I started. Because when I worked at workshop, I had to be at my desk at 9 a.m. I clocked in like everybody else. I didn't get special treatment. I had a half
Hmm.
hour lunch and I left there at 5:30. So when I started to do things on my own, I would get up at like noon and stay up all night, paint and work, which is kind of more fitting to my lifestyle, like to get in these blocks of creativity and just keep going. It's hard to put that on a time clock, in a schedule. So being at the workshop, I wasn't feeling very creative at 9 in the morning because my
Yeah.
brain was still half asleep. So um yeah, that was, I think it was easier to do freelance stuff because I could set my own hours and my own schedule, manage things on my own time.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I worked for as a graphic designer for the Mint Museum in Charlotte and for some other places, and I was always like, dude, I'm not getting much done while I'm here all day. I just go home and sit at my computer and work on this stuff all night anyway. It's like, and I feel better doing it. And like you said, at 9 in the morning, you're like, ah, it's just no fun sitting there behind a computer trying to draw something, do some typography or whatever. I don't know. But I think if you want to be creative, it's just sometimes that 9 to 5, like it's just you're not working on that. It might be like 1 a.m. to like 6 a.m. or it could be anytime you feel like really doing something. I
Yeah.
I think back in the day when it was more physical, like if you had the artwork already created and you had to do like physical mock-ups and physical stuff, when stuff was still analog,
Yeah.
like then work at a doing art at work might be cool at 9 a.m. But as far as like sitting behind a computer, like it just, yeah, I understand where you're
Yeah.
coming from.
Yeah, and that's what I did too. When I would get home from workshop, like that's when I would start to sketch out ideas. But it was rad to just have a position where I didn't like shed that. I wasn't like trying to get the dirt off me when I left the building. Like I was
Hmm.
still the workshop dude when I got home to my apartment, and I still wanted to keep working. And that's where a lot of the development took place. So if I was coming up with a series, I would usually sketch that at night, and the next day I would go in and start to do it on the computer. So I'd have a sketchbook full of like whatever series, Chicken Wire, Creeps, like all the ones that I put together.
Hmm.
Yeah, most of that was done at home. And then I didn't have a computer. So I would go in at 9 in the morning and start kind of like transferring the sketches into like Illustrator. And so that was a big part of how it came together. I was always like thinking word.
Yeah, but that's kind of what you got to do. It can't just be,
Oh
when you're
yeah.
doing that type of work, it's like 8 more or 5 more hours, 6 more hours a night, but they're not bad hours, I'm saying, but that's when you can really like do what you want to do, get stuff done, really.
Yeah, there's no way the output between doing t-shirts, cut and sew, labels, hang tags, like
Oh,
all
yeah, you can't get it all done.
right. There was no way. And like that's the
Especially, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say that's the thing about coming in there and just finding Hill surrounded by these like piles of stuff that he was working on. He was even doing like outerwear whenever workshop did all that snowboarding apparel. He's designing this stuff, designing jackets, and he's doing all the accessories, wallets. He's got all these samples around him, and wheels and boards and catalogs. And he's doing it. He's just living. It's sucking the life out of him. You can see he's just like he's just drained. But all that stuff had to be done, and he didn't trust anyone to do it. So when I came in there, I was able to at least take off. Like I started doing all the catalogs. I started doing a lot of the T-shirts and all the board graphics, and um, I'm sure he was just like he didn't care at that point. I think he was just glad
Yeah.
to get some of it off of him.
He was stressed in the early 90s. I could only imagine by the late 90s, early 2000s.
I don't know how he did it. I mean, it's inspiring to see somebody that is that motivated, but that was his life, dude. That like work, sleep for years to get that stuff done. And it was amazing. Like that branding, the identity, all that stuff was incredible. It speaks for itself, but that's a lot of sacrifice, to build something because it was like the house that Hill built in a lot of ways.
Right. So how long did it take for you to settle into a groove, not only with your output, but in deciding what projects are worth your time? Because we all know some projects just aren't worth it.
Yeah, it was a little bit of trial and error to figure out. Like when I first started, if people would pay my fee, I would take the job. Pretty much, that was my standard. Like, this is what I'll charge. If you'll pay it, then I'll take the job. And then I started to get a little more picky about clients and terms, and I learned more about business and contracts and terms and money, and just got better over time. Like I probably wasn't very good right out of the gate, but I had a really good agent for a while. He was the agent for oh man, what is his name? The guy who did the Duran Duran album cover. He was like an 80s illustrator, Patrick Nagel. So he was an agent for Patrick Nagel in the 80s, and he was incredible. Like he knew how to do collaborations and work out at least terms. I learned a lot about all that stuff from him, but it was just like kind of slowly building some momentum and learning how to keep myself from getting screwed. And eventually I just felt comfortable to where, I like negotiating with somebody like PepsiCo didn't bother me at all because I knew what I wanted and they knew what they wanted. And it was just a matter of like working out all the terms and all that. So
Mhm. So how did you end up doing design work for Pearl Jam? And I don't know if I ever told you this, but I used to see Eddie Vedder at Pacific Drive Skate Shop in San Diego every once in a while. And we were all into hip hop, so no one ever talked to him or bothered him. He would just come in and buy like a wetsuit, or he would even be surfing around there. So,
he
well,
still
yeah.
surfs. Yeah, Eddie still surfs. Um, uh, Jeff Ament, the bassist for the band, he had
Mm-hmm.
bought some of my paintings. And I didn't really, when I saw a painting, I don't look into anybody's lives or anything. I just package it up, and we had emailed back and forth. He'd asked me some questions, and I was just like, "Oh, this dude's super nice." And I met
Did
him.
you recognize the name at all when?
I didn't,
Yeah, I wouldn't have.
but uh, that was probably better that way because later on somebody said, "Hey, the guy from the bassist from Pearl Jam collects your paintings," and I was like, "He's never bought them from me. Like he must have got them from somebody else." Which
Mm-hmm.
isn't, I mean, he could have somebody buying them. But then I kind of remembered back, and this guy who had emailed me and asked me specifically about this one painting, and we started talking just about like life and death. And he had lost a good friend at the time, and my dad had recently passed. So to me, it was just like two strangers having a conversation about a painting. And then,
Mm-hmm.
so after he bought some paintings, I think he used one of the paintings for an album cover. He did a solo album.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, just out of the blue, he was like, "Hey, will you do a 10?" This was their 10th album they were working on. He's like, "I need a logo that's like the inner, like use the Pearl Jam logo and 10 somehow together." And I think I was like, if you really want to do this right, we should let me do the album cover. Like, I kind of tried to talk him into it, and then even having like a different logo for each song. But he was super open to it, you know, like we got along really well just talking about like album covers that we liked in the past and just like our love for music and how much that part is skateboarding because he's a skateboarder and had been like since the 70s, you know, like started off real early. So it just was an opportunity and it was awesome because Jeff is just super genuine nice guy. Like every time I hear somebody talk about him, they say the same thing, but it's true. He's just a real normal, like super nice guy. He builds skate parks. Like I don't know.
It's amazing. That's cool. Yeah, I know he's done a lot of charity work and seems like a really cool guy. So yeah, lucky opportunity for you. You got hooked. He started to buy your paintings.
Yeah, and people have asked me a lot about the Pearl Jam album, but uh it was more like doing a skateboard project than it was doing any, you know, like if I worked for a corporation, there's a lot of terms and a lot of like guidelines I have to adhere to, style sheets, style books, all that stuff. With him, it was just like, what do you want to do? What do you like? Do you like this? We went back and forth. He sent me some sketches and Ed sent over some sketches and it just came together real naturally. I mean, we were just like, I mean, it was like playing. It really was like, you could
That's awesome.
do that. So, yeah, it was real mellow, the whole process, the creative part. And then as far as like the Grammy part of it, like Jeff was the art director for that project. I mean, he's the guy that put everything together. He was the yes or no guy. And that's what the Grammy was for art direction. He chose to share that with me and Joe Spix, this other guy that worked on like some of the layout. So
Hmm.
I got credit for that, even though that was Jeff's award. I just kind of got, you know, I mean, he was just nice enough to include us into that.
That's awesome. Let's bring it into more recent times. And you did a skate company called Dark Room. How was that experience for you, bro?
Um, You know, Darkroom started back around 2005 after Alien Workshop. I was just doing t-shirts and stuff. So I kind of had the branding and everything down. I always wanted to do it properly. And met Mike Sinclair, who wanted to do something. Like Mike's been around. He's team manager for Nike amateur team and team manager for all the Tomato brands. He does slabby trucks. Like he approached me and was like, "Hey, me and this other guy know we're gonna do a company and we want you to do some of the art. What would you charge us?" And so they told me they wanted to do a brand called Doolittle. They,
Hmm.
they couldn't get the name because it was already trademarked by somebody, I don't know, somebody in Orange County or something. So I was like, you can use the name Darkroom, but I want a part of the company. And we worked all that out, and then that eventually just became Mike left. Mike was like, later, guys, this is like this is taking too much of my time. I mean, he didn't dump it on us. He like we worked it all out. It was super mellow, but somebody else came in and it was great until it sucked. Like that's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, it was good until it wasn't.
Uh, yeah. I mean, I had like a horrible 6 months after that, but there was no other option. Like people think, yeah, skateboarding was slow, sales were slow, everything was slowing down. That's not why Darkroom went out of business. Darkroom went out of business so I could protect myself from someone that was making bad decisions. But you know, while it was going on, it was great. I wouldn't do it again. Like I don't think I'll ever have another partner, like business partner for anything. But uh I feel like I feel like Darkroom did a lot of cool stuff while we were around. And
Dude, I have a really good idea. It's called Amway. Would you like to invest?
yeah, yeah, like a pyramid scheme. Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but it was just yeah. I learned a lot of lessons the hard way. I would say the worst part about it was the team. You know, like I brought all these guys in, we turned guys pro, and these guys trusted us. And um, in the end, looking back now from the past year, the company probably wouldn't have lasted. I don't know. I mean, we would have had to take out some loans or something to keep it going, but
Mhm.
mhm, it was hard to let those guys go, man. Like I said, a lot of sleepless nights. I felt a lot of guilt over it, but ultimately, it was just self preservation, you know. So If I could do it again in a different time with a different person, maybe it would have worked. I don't know.
Now, is there any projects or products you want to mention in case the audience wants to buy something you worked on, or where can people purchase prints of your work?
No, I mean, fortunately, everything that I've got sells. It sells out. Like my prints always sell out. Fortunately, knock on wood. But and then the upcoming projects, they're always kept quiet, until they launch.
What a okay.
I have a solo show coming up in
Now,
2026.
where can they keep tabs besides like Instagram? Like, do you post stuff on elephant.com still?
No, it's mostly just that's just kind of like a portfolio site to
Mm-hmm.
like potential clients so they can see older work. But Instagram's the best place because
Okay.
I have a print or something or project. I usually announce it there. But I do have a solo show coming up in San Francisco for spring of 2026 at Heron Gallery. So that's gonna be probably the biggest show I've done, hopefully. Like,
Congratulations, brother.
thanks. And I have a couple of like concert posters coming out in the next few months that I can't talk about. All that stuff's always hush hush. Um, I've been working on a book of old graphics. So I did one book early, like I think it was around 2014, just a soft cover. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing a hardcover book this time of like sketches, paintings, prints, skateboard stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to get that out by the end of summer. Um, I'm doing some stuff for the Huntington Museum of Art, like a reprinting for those guys. And I don't know, man. I've been so busy, and I'm doing some stuff for Strange Love that should be coming out like I don't know, 3 months, 4 months maybe. So one foot still in skateboarding always.
Okay, finally, a desert island style question. You get one band's discography, who you gonna take? And this is a hard one because do you pick a band you really love with a short, tight discography, or do you pick like, you know, a jazz artist with like a million? Or you could pick Prince, bro, because he's got a vault. But
Prince would be Prince would be up there, but I would have to say The Cure because you get the longevity. You get like almost 50 years worth of
different,
discography.
a
But you
duration
also
of styles and production
right, you
qualities.
get like the super happy stuff, you get the super dark stuff, you get like the in between, you get all the B sides, like the connect the dots stuff. So you get I think that's like a win-win. You get longevity, you get like the whole vault worth of the, the unreleased stuff and the full album stuff. It's the Cure for sure.
Sorry, Morrissey and Marr. Okay.
You know what's funny is like I wanted to tell this story earlier, but one time I went to your house and I was still in high school and I was probably staying with you, and your parents were always like, your dad's always like, stay as long as you want. Your dad gave me money for breakfast and stuff. But we were in your room and you put on this album and it was like, is that your mom's album? Like, what are you? And it was 10,000 Maniacs, like in my tribe or something. And it was like, this is not like you don't listen to this stuff. This has got to be your mom's. I'm like, no, this is 10,000 Maniacs. But on like a lot of good music I got exposed to was from you. Jane's Addiction. I would say like I'd heard of the Smiths, but I never had a Smiths album until you loaned me. I think probably The Queen is Dead or something. Um, yeah, the Smiths, probably even like the deeper Cure stuff, like the older Cure stuff I never heard of. Um, there was so much stuff that I never heard of that I got from you at that point. I would say like my junior senior year after we met, and I still listen to that James Addiction, like that live album, the first one on Triple X.
All I can say about that is thank you, Columbia House, for letting me steal thousands of dollars worth of music over the years and never paying you a penny. Thank you.
They're coming for you now.
That's how exactly.
But then also hip hop, like now, like I had because I was with you all the time. I had to listen to Too Short, EPMD, like
Yeah, you got the crazy mix. You got the gangster rap and the and Morrissey.
I did.
Like, if people were like, "Wow, that's very bipolar," but it was.
No, it's so good because I remember I wasn't a big fan of rap, like what they call gangster rap, like loosely call it gangster rap. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I liked all kinds of hip hop though. Like, I mean, I didn't just listen to like whatever.
I get into your car, the one, boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
and it was
Thanks,
always like too short.
thanks, Ron Patrick, for the speakers.
No, but all that stuff, like there's so much you've got to meet people and like put yourself out there to get exposed to stuff like that. And I'm so grateful that you and I got to meet and I got to like kind of like absorb some of the shit that you had learned at a young age. And there's so many stories that I would never tell publicly, but like one time I come to Huntington and I saw you and you were outside the shop and you had Greek written on your grip tape. It just said Greek. And I was like, what is that? And you answered it in a way that I'm not gonna like publicly say, but like look at me, it's tweaked. Like you said it casually, like you were just telling me your name, but it was like the most raw, disgusting description of like why it was on there. It was so sick. And I was just like, this guy's like Dusty, just a little more polished, but
Dude. Like, because my friend John Maynard found an old, like, 70s porno thing that says Greek, and it was dirty. And he took it home and kept it under his bed forever. And I was like, dude, that thing is so nasty. And so we used to just write that everywhere just to, like, mess with him and just have fun. But
yeah, that was a unique situation there.
now, if you had one food on this desert island, what would it be?
Oh, pizza for sure, 100%, no fail. Like,
Pizza. Pizza for the win.
yeah.
What if it's Spider Island?
Uh, I just as long as I get a flamethrower, I would probably
I mean,
like
you're not gonna have a
spiders off.
flamethrower, bro. You're just gonna have to commit suicide in the water.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't want to live on an island with spiders. I don't even.
I know how much you hate spiders. That's why I said that.
Yeah, no spider, no.
Well, we're good, brother. I appreciate you doing this for me.
Oh yeah,
I had a good time.
Greek,
Thanks,
Greek out.
Don.
Yeah, no problem, John. Good to talk to you.